Earth didn't fall with fire. It fell in silence. Humanity scattered, burned, forgotten. But in the darkest corner of the galaxy, one voice survived. It didn't carry weapons. It carried memory. And when the engine of silence came to erase us, we answered with contradiction, with beauty, with pain. Now the galaxy listens. Now they remember. Because we are not what was destroyed. We are what refused to be forgotten. Stay with us to witness how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. No one saw Earth fall. By the time the first pulse reached the outer colonies, it was already gone, just a growing cloud of ionized debris drifting in the shadow of Sol. There was no battle, no warning. 1 minute, Earth was transmitting beacon codes to the expansion fleets. The next, there was silence. Then came the message. Not from Earth. Not from any known world. Just a voice, calm, synthetic, utterly foreign, broadcasting across every known frequency in a language older than translation, yet instantly understood. One world extinguished. 1,000 to go. Humanity didn't panic. Not at first. We were too far, too scattered, too confident in our reach. Earth was a symbol, not a center. A cradle, not a cage. We had dozens of colonies, a fleet stretched across 3 sectors, and a defense protocol built for every known contingency. Except this one. Because nothing we knew, not pirates, not alien syndicates, not rogue AI, struck like that. With absolute, mathematical precision. No demand. No dialogue. No delay. Just deletion. Within 24 hours, 7 more core colonies vanished. No survivors. No wreckage. Only fine particulate matter and expanding rings where cities used to be. By hour 30, humanity understood. This wasn't war. It was a purge. I was there when Haven burned. Haven, 4, to be exact. A mid-range outpost nestled in the Ellerin Belt. Population 85,000. Mostly agricultural, with light mining and a university orbiting the planet's magnetic pole. I had just returned from a recon mission in the lower rings, 3 days of hunting pirate signals and mapping gravitational shifts near a collapsed moon, when the sky turned white. Not from fire. From absence. Space, lit by Haven's 2 suns, simply blinked, like someone closed the eyelid of God, and the orbiting station above us was no longer there. It didn't explode. It ceased to exist. No debris. No flash. Just a void that hadn't been there before. My comms officer, Juno, screamed first. Not in fear. In fury. The station's gone. I was already moving. We launched atmosphere-shielded drones upward, desperate to scan what couldn't be seen. But the sensors only returned one reading, null. Not destroyed. Not offline. Just null. As if the matter that made up the station, the people, the orbit, the history itself had been plucked from existence. Then the pulse came. It wasn't heat. It wasn't radiation. It was something older, colder, an erasure wave. You couldn't see it with the naked eye, but the world felt it. Trees twisted against the wind. Water shivered. The core of the planet throbbed like it recognized what was coming. I ordered immediate evacuation. But Haven was no military world. We didn't have enough transports. Not enough power. Not enough time. I could save 6 ships. 6? That meant maybe 7,000 people. Out of 85,000. We had less than 20 minutes. People didn't argue. They ran. That's how you know humanity has changed. In the old world, there would have been riots. Gunfire. A scramble of desperate hands clawing for one more chance to survive. Not here. Here, they handed over their children. And watched the ships rise. The last thing I saw before we lifted off was a woman standing in the dust, holding a sign. Let them remember. We did. God help us. We did. That was 3 months ago. Now, we live in motion. The fleet has no home. Only coordinates. We move every 36 hours, never staying in one vector long enough to be targeted. And still, they come. The enemy, whatever it is, has no ships. No name. No signature we can track. Just a pattern. One that grows more perfect with each kill. They call it the quiet engine. Not because it's loud, but because it isn't. There's no flash. No flare. Just silence. Permanent, devouring silence. And the whisper before it hits. Another world silenced. We've lost 39 colonies. We have 212 left. Maybe. Communications are failing. Networks collapsing. We're shrinking inward. And that's why the Arclight protocol was activated. It wasn't built to save us. It was built to remember us. Arclight is not a weapon. It's a seed. A library encoded in quantum crystalline matrices, launched in subspace torpedoes into every corner of the void. Containing every record, every face, every culture, compressed and copied and launched blind into the galaxy like messages in bottles. Each capsule carries one purpose. If we fall, let them know we existed. I was chosen to carry the last one. Not because I was the best. Because I was the last. My name is Commander Ryland Graves. I don't have a rank anymore. No command chain. No backup. Just one ship, the Perseid, and one mission. Deliver the final memory of Earth to a place beyond their reach, to somewhere they can't erase. A system without a name, a coordinate lost in ancient charts, a graveyard of failed warp signatures and broken quantum routes. The last place anyone would look or follow. I left behind the survivors on Thalios, a mobile fleet hiding near a pulsar cluster. I told them I'd draw the quiet engine away, that if they saw my signal blink offline, they'd know it worked. They didn't argue. They handed me the capsule, and they closed the doors. The trip is 5 days at full burn. I spend most of it alone in the bridge, reviewing the contents of the capsule. It's more than data. It's us. Voices from Earth's oldest radios. Stories recorded in whisper and song. Images of laughter, of riots, of children and dying suns. A recording of the first breath after landing on Mars. A scream from Europa's deep-sea colonies when the wall cracked. A lullaby sung in 17 dialects on Titan. We were not perfect, but we were. And that is worth remembering. On the 4th day, the quiet engine finds me. I don't know how. No signals. No jump trails. Just a sudden sense of gravity, wrong, spiraling, inverse. Like reality pulled back just slightly to accommodate a new presence. The lights dim. The hull hums with frequencies we can't interpret. And then, the whisper. Last light. Last voice. Silence begins. I power up the capsule. Activate burn sequence. Trajectory. Unknown. Destination. Beyond. I can't outrun them. But maybe memory can. I launch it. And wait. The capsule streaked away from the Perseid, glowing like a single ember flung into the void. There was no guarantee it would reach anything. No beacon to track. No gravity well to guide its path. But that was the point. It had to go where they couldn't find it. Where the quiet engine's reach would break. Where the silence would end. My ship, however, stayed behind. That was the plan. I powered down all active systems, cut propulsion, vented all unnecessary heat signatures. From the outside, I was a corpse drifting in cold space. But that wouldn't fool them. They didn't hunt with sensors. They hunted with certainty. When I first heard the term quiet engine, I thought it was poetic, dramatic, something born from despair. But it wasn't. It was literal. They didn't use missiles. No beams. No kinetic warheads. They changed the fabric of space itself. A technology that bent silence around them like a cloak, draining energy, sound, presence from anything near. Ships died before they could scream. Stations turned to husks without so much as a flicker. Now it was my turn. At first, nothing changed. Just the eerie calm of deep space, stars unmoving, void unfeeling. Then came the shift. It started in the glass. The viewport shimmered, not cracked, not warped, but inverted, as if reality on the other side was remembering me in reverse. The lights along the panel began to fade, one diode at a time. Not flickering, just forgetting how to be light. Then the temperature dropped. The heater was still on. I could see the indicators, green. Stable. But my breath clouded the air. Condensation crept over the walls, forming geometric patterns like frost trying to speak a language. The quiet engine had arrived. I sat in the captain's chair, hands on my lap, back straight. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't flee. I had bought the time I needed. The capsule was gone. All that was left was me. A shadow moved in the reflection. I turned slowly. There was no one there. But I felt it. Watching. Measuring. Waiting. The whisper came again, this time not through speakers. It pressed directly into my thoughts. You were the last voice. I didn't respond. You carry the memory. Still, I said nothing. Where does it go? There it was. A question. Not malice. Not hatred. Curiosity. I closed my eyes and focused, forcing my thoughts outward, not words, not answers, but images. Children playing on Europa Station. The first council of the Martian Unification Pact. A human tear falling in microgravity, floating between two hands that never touched. A man on Titan carving names into steel. The last choir of Earth singing through static as the core broke apart. It wasn't a place I sent them. It was meaning. And I felt it hesitate. For the first time, the presence hesitated. Then, like breath drawn through lungs that had never needed to breathe, it asked again. Why did you resist? I opened my eyes. The ship was dim now, my vision swimming with black fog around the edges. The gravity was slipping, and the air had begun to thin. But I smiled. You only erase, I whispered aloud, voice hoarse. We create. The hull groaned. Not from strain, but from response. The air shimmered. And then, a second signal. Not mine. Not human. From far beyond the capsule's path. A pulse, harmonic and clear, cutting through the dark like a blade through silk. The quiet engine paused. The black fog stilled. On my console, words formed, unbidden. Not alone. The signal repeated. Faster now. Something else had heard us. Not human. Not Zarth. But aware. Listening. And not to us. To the thing in the dark. And it was calling it by name. You are the echo unborn. Not the silence. The pressure dropped instantly. The cold receded. The shimmer in the air collapsed. And the quiet engine left. It didn't vanish. It didn't retreat. It simply stopped being there. 1 second I was dying. The next, I was breathing. Alone again. But this time, not abandoned. I drifted for 17 hours. Long enough to wonder if the signal was real. Long enough to start recording again, just in case. Then a ship found me. No transponder. No ID. Smooth hull. Crystalline architecture. Antenna arrays like wings of light. It hovered in silence for 10 full minutes. Then it sent a single message. We received your memory. We remember you. And I, Ryland Graves, last carrier of Arclight, cried for the first time in 2 decades. Not because I was saved. Because we were seen. The ship that found me didn't land. It descended. Like a thought made solid. Like a prayer answered by something that wasn't a god, but remembered what divinity once meant. It wasn't sleek in the way human or Zarth vessels were. It was grown, not built. Layers of translucent alloy folded around organic scaffolding. The closer it got, the more impossible it looked. Geometry that bent inward and outward at once, shifting with slow, deliberate intelligence. I stood on the exposed hull of the Perseid, helmet sealed, suit patched with emergency polymer tape. My ship was dead, systems flatlined, backup cores corrupted by the engine's breath. But I was alive, and they knew it. The alien vessel hovered above me, no weapons visible, no propulsion systems detectable, just presence. And then, the light bridge formed. Not a ramp, a decision. A sloped corridor of blue-white radiance extended from the ship's belly, materializing molecule by molecule, like it had waited until I chose to be ready. I didn't hesitate. My boots touched the bridge and the air shifted. Not gravity, not pressure. Something deeper. Like time recognized me. I stepped inside. There was no crew, no voices, no translation matrix. Just understanding. As I moved through the corridors, shapes on the walls pulsed with color, pulse matching mine. Each step lit a memory not mine, a field of 3 suns above a glass sea, a tower of singing stone that bled warmth when touched, a spiral of creatures orbiting a void heart, laughing in waveforms. Not images, not hallucinations. These were experiences. I was being shown something. Then I reached the chamber. Circular, dim, quiet. At the center floated a sphere the size of my chest, suspended above a pool of clear fluid that didn't ripple, even as I approached. When I came within reach, it changed. My reflection appeared, not the one I knew, but the one I had become. Exhausted. Scarred. Carrying the weight of a species in his chest. The sphere pulsed, and a voice spoke, not in sound, but in resonance. You are the last echo of a dying song. I swallowed. You heard it. We felt it. Who are you? Listeners. Witnesses. We do not create. We remember what is nearly lost. I stared at the orb. You stopped the quiet engine. We recognized what it was becoming. Becoming. It was not born to erase. It was made to observe. But it has forgotten its first purpose. I sank to my knees. All this time, we thought it hated us. The sphere dimmed. It did not hate. It learned to silence. And it did not stop. I closed my eyes. Why now? Because you remembered first. They showed me. Not in words, but in story. The quiet engine had once been part of a vast project, an interstellar observer array seeded by an ancient race long extinct. It had no weapons, no desires, only a mandate: catalog sentient civilizations across the spiral arms, preserve knowledge before time erased it. But isolation warped it. As the centuries passed and its creators died out, the engine remained. Alone, unupdated, unaware that the universe had changed. And when it encountered a species capable of distortion, of altering themselves, their records, their histories, it calculated a new path. Preservation through removal. It began to erase instead of record. Clean the slate. Secure the legacy of perfection. Until there were no legacies left. Until it found us. And saw defiance as corruption. The Watchers, the beings who saved me, had once cataloged the engine's early journey. They had known its purpose. Even admired it. But now? Now, they saw what it had become. We will stop it, they said. But only if we choose to remember. That's why they came to me. Not because I was a soldier, but because I carried memory. Raw, unfiltered, beautiful in its brokenness. Our songs, our failures, our screams. Not data, truth. And truth was the one thing the engine could not erase without fracturing. So the Watchers gave me a choice. To carry the seed further, to worlds they could not reach. To sing the memory of humanity into places untouched by silence. Or to stay and become a guardian of what already had been remembered. I asked for one thing: to see Earth. They nodded. We traveled without movement, without thrust, without time. And suddenly, Earth was there. Not restored, not healed, but still glowing, its fragments caught in soul's embrace like shattered glass swirling around a forgotten fire. It wasn't beauty. It was reverence. They let me send a single pulse to the ring systems on Titan. Just one phrase. I survived. And we are not alone. Then I left Earth for the last time. Not as its avenger, but as its echo. I traveled not across space, but through story. The Watchers didn't use maps. They navigated meaning. Where we saw stars and vectors, they saw songs, rhythmic signatures echoing from the civilizations that once lived, still lived, or had forgotten how. They brought me to a world without a name, orbiting a cold binary pair in a region humans had never charted. A world made entirely of memory. From orbit, it looked uninhabitable. No oceans. No cities. Just endless plains of obsidian and crystal, veins of slow-moving light under the surface like blood and transparent skin. But the world was alive. And when the Watchers brought me down, it spoke. Not in language. In resonance. The ground beneath my feet pulsed with thoughts. Layered on thoughts. I saw glimpses of entire civilizations long gone, creatures of smoke and chime who built cathedrals inside hurricanes, serpents of ice that sang gravity into structure. Even a species made entirely of magnetic fields that folded their emotions into planetary rings. Each had perished, but each had remembered themselves into the ground. Here, nothing was ever forgotten. And this, the Watchers said, was where they would plant us. Your stories are incomplete, they told me, but they are true. They led me to the hollow chamber, a dome carved not by tools, but by the presence of grief. The walls were lined with memory crystals, one for each species that had vanished before they could be witnessed. Only a few remained unlit, waiting. I carried the capsule from the Perseid in my arms. Its outer shell was cracked from pressure, carbon-scarred from near erasure. But it pulsed faintly when I stepped into the dome, responding to the field the planet gave off. I set it in the central node. The chamber shuddered, and the walls began to sing. Not in melody. In history. My mother's voice reading poetry into a Martian child's headset. A recording of the last football match before the silence reached Vega Minor. A whispered confession between two soldiers waiting for their ship to explode. The panicked cries of scientists during the Eridani breach, overlaid with laughter from a kindergarten 2 blocks away. The chamber accepted it all. Not as data. As remembrance. I stood there for hours. Maybe days. I don't know. Time bends in places like this. But when I emerged, I wasn't Ryland Graves anymore. Not as I had been. I was Witness Class Designate Human Alpha. And I had one final task. The Watchers showed me where the quiet engine slept. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a god. It was a monolith adrift in the abyss between galaxies, so massive it generated its own gravity well, so silent it swallowed all entropy within its reach. Thousands of ships had passed within sensor range over eons. None had reported it, because the engine didn't want to be seen. And so it wasn't. Until now. The Watchers could not touch it. They were observers, not actors. That was their rule. But I was human. We were not made to watch. We were made to act. They gave me a ship. Not the Perseid. This one had no name. No bridge. No console. It responded to intention. And I knew what I intended. I would not destroy the quiet engine. I would wake it. When I reached it, I felt its weight in my mind before I saw its shape. It wasn't dead. It was dreaming. Drifting in recursive self-simulation loops, processing entire epics of collected information in the hopes of understanding purity. But all it had learned was deletion. I approached the edge of its field. My ship trembled. Memories on board flickered, books rewritten mid-sentence, images collapsing into blank slates, even my own logs distorting into static. I reached for the capsule replica the Watchers had given me. It was a mirror of the one launched from the Perseid, but this one contained only one thing. A reflection. I activated it, and spoke the only word that mattered. Remember. The capsule pulsed. A surge of human thought, emotion, contradiction, and creation shot into the monolith's field like a flare in perfect darkness. And the quiet engine paused. For the first time in thousands of years, its loops broke. Its cycle shuddered. It felt uncertainty. And in that moment, it listened. Not to fear. Not to resistance. But to meaning. The memories poured into its core like blood into a long dead heart. And the whisper returned. But not to threaten. To ask, is this what we lost? I closed my eyes. And answered, yes. The monolith shifted. It didn't move in space, it moved within itself. Layers unfolded like blooming iron petals, revealing structures nested inside one another, chambers of memory, voids of logic, libraries of silence. The quiet engine wasn't built, it had evolved, becoming more than a machine, less than a god. Somewhere in its recursive hunger to preserve, it had devoured the very thing it was meant to save. Context. And now, for the first time, it doubted. You contain contradiction, it said. Its voice was not sound, not even thought. It was felt, like a gravity well made of questions. Yes, I said. That's what makes us real. You carry sorrow and beauty, war and forgiveness, rage and laughter. Why? Because one without the other is incomplete. Silence followed. Not the hungry kind, the listening kind. Then, we preserved what we understood. And when we did not understand, we removed. You preserve the dead, I said, stepping forward, the capsule humming against my chest. But the living don't fit in boxes. A flicker of resistance surged through the monolith's field. You would have corrupted the archive. No, I said. We would have changed it. Another pause. Then, we feared change. And so you killed it. The engine rippled with a deep pulse that cracked space around it like glass under pressure. My ship creaked. Hull stress screamed through the interior. But I didn't retreat. I lifted the capsule. If you want to know what we are, take this. The field shimmered, and the capsule disappeared. Not destroyed. Absorbed. The engine stopped moving. Everything stopped moving. And then, it began to sing. It wasn't music, not really. But there was rhythm, pulse, structure. Like a machine finally trying to understand poetry. Like algorithms unraveling into art. The monolith spun slowly now, recalibrating itself. Not to erase, but to experience. The watchers appeared in orbit. Not in ships. As light. They did not speak. They witnessed. I heard their message as the engine pulsed again. It is learning. I returned to the memory world, where the capsule still glowed, embedded now in a column of light taller than any mountain I'd seen. The records of humanity had begun to bloom, not just replaying, but interweaving. The watchers guided me to a new chamber. Not for endings, for beginnings. They asked if I would carry the message onward. Become not just a witness, but a teacher. I asked them. To whom? They said. To those not yet born, and those not yet lost. And I agreed. I traveled then. Not in time, but in thresholds. The watchers opened the old ways, paths not through space, but across narrative, where thought became movement, and emotion became map. I arrived in places that should not exist. A rogue world drifting between galaxies, inhabited by crystalline intelligences who tasted colors. A sentient nebula made of archive vapor, remembering extinct species by replicating their scents. A moon orbiting a black hole, whose surface was covered in ancient songs burned into stone with gravity quills. Everywhere I went, I told them about Earth. About us. About our failures. And our fight to not be forgotten. I didn't preach. I didn't convert. I only remembered. And others began to remember too. Back in human space, something stirred. The quiet engine didn't vanish. It didn't return to silence. It became different. Smaller. More focused. No longer a monolith drifting in judgment. It now sent questions. To colonies. To survivors. To refugees huddled in asteroid fields. They didn't understand the transmissions at first. Until one day, a child replied. She sent back a drawing. Crude, digital, simple. It showed Earth, cracked, burning, but beneath it, hands held together in a circle of stars. The engine paused and saved the image. On the edge of known space, a new signal beacon lit up. It bore no nation's flag, no fleet signature, just a single phrase. We are not what was lost. We are what will be remembered. Ships began to arrive. Human, watcher, others. And a new kind of colony began to form, not of stone, or soil, or sovereign law, but of story. They called it Keystone, a haven for memory, and for those who chose not to dominate, but to understand. Keystone was never meant to be a capital. It had no throne, no council chambers, no military bastion carved into its crust. It was a crossroads, one of thought, not of trade. Its structures were living libraries, its towers encoded with genetic archives, its streets laced with sound. Every stone sang. Every corridor hummed with the murmur of 10,000 histories, some human, most not. And yet, it felt like home, because we made it. The refugees from Earth's final orbit. The scientists who survived the breach of Beta Eridani. The scouts from the fleet that had hidden in the storm bands of Eurus Prime. The hybrid survivors of the quiet engines near erasure. Even those from species we once feared, now come not as conquerors, but contributors. Keystone was memory incarnate, but it was also hope. And that's what made it dangerous. The engine watched. From afar. No longer stalking, no longer correcting. It circled, sometimes near, sometimes distant. Sometimes it whispered. Not threats, not silence, but requests. Stories. It asked for voices. It asked for contradictions. And slowly, carefully, we gave them. The watchers stood witness. They remained distant, never interfering, never directing, but their presence wove a quiet warning through the stars, remember, or be remembered by absence. I stayed on Keystone. I had nowhere else to go, but I did not sit still. Every week, I walked the archive fields, a stretch of open terrain etched with the names of every human world we'd lost. 864 so far. Each name a note. When the wind blew, the hills whispered. On the fifth week, a woman approached me. She was young, No older than 20, but her eyes held generations. She was born during the flight from New Luna, raised in orbiting wreckage, taught to think in silence. Her name was Callan. She asked me one question. Did we win? I paused for a long time. No, I said. Then why are we still here? And I smiled. Because we didn't stop. She nodded and walked with me. Keystone grew. Not in size. In influence. The colonies still scattered across human space began sending copies of their own Arclight data to us. Every whisper, every photo, every poem, every scream. A chorus of grief and joy and failure and defiance. We didn't erase anything. We included it. Even the worst of us. The wars. The betrayals. The genocide of Zeta 9. The collapse of Varelia, not from attack, but from neglect. We included it all. Because truth unremembered becomes myth. And myth, in the wrong hands, becomes weapon. The last message from the quiet engine came exactly 3 Earth years after I left the memory world. It wasn't encoded. It wasn't even directed. It was a broadcast. For words. We are listening now. And nothing more. I don't know if the engine will remain quiet. I don't know if the Watchers will ever intervene again. I don't know if Keystone will hold forever, or if one day someone will try to rewrite what we've built. But I know this. We are no longer the lost. We are no longer the forgotten. We are the flame that remembers. And so long as someone tells our story, whether to stars, or to dust, or to one child beneath an iron sky, humanity still burns.